And we have Mr. Furedi. He is a sociologist and a social commentator. And since the late 90s, Mr. Furedi has been amply cited on his views why our Western societies find it so difficult to engage with risk and uncertainty. And thank you very much for all to come here and to join our talk.
Good morning, but don't call me Mr. Furedi, call me Frank. You know, the theme of today is the Renaissance, its regeneration, which I think is really a very important moment for us, because what people in the Renaissance did, especially in the years leading up to the Renaissance, was to look to the past, and as they looked behind them to the past and tried to make sense of their destiny, they also began to realize for the first time in European history, in fact, I would say throughout history, that humankind doesn't need to simply carry on in the old way. That humankind isn't just merely the passive objects of history, of destiny, but that what they called fortuna, fortune, you know, sort of was something that they could shape or influence. And it's really at that moment that the idea of humanism, the idea that human beings have got a capacity but also a responsibility to make a better world, really comes into its own. It's no longer something that happens to us by these metaphysical forces working behind our backs. It's something that you and I, just ordinary people, are capable of getting done.
I think that's on stake. Is there an era of transition? Yes, I can't ignore the fact that we are in a transition right now. The question is, what kind of transition is that?
Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure you all have a great interest in the subject, as we do. I'll just quickly try to tell you why we are talking about this and what exactly we're going to talk about. When we talk about freedom of expression in this session, we'll be referring to artistic freedom of expression, specifically, because we cannot cover everything else. That is freedom of press, of assembly, etc. What brought us to talk about freedom of expression today is that in the past, the censorship was quite regulated, was imposed by the state, it was clearly demarcated. And today, in contempt, there's contemporary forms of censorship that are not clear. They come from society, they come from people you live with, they come from some systems they just pop up and you don't even know that you have to take that into consideration at some point while you were creating your work.
In questa direzione riguarda il riconoscimento di una forma, di un modo di fare teatro che chiamiamo semplicemente residenza.
The only attempt that has been made in this country, in some region of this country, to give voice to this new situation is a new form which is, broadly speaking, called residencies.
Abbiamo
The
lavorato
first thing we have made in thinking about this new form is the residency was to understand which new form these residencies were.
What he's really saying is that because there is something there to be understood, there is some insights to be gained, there's a truth out there that we need to make our own and assimilate into our humanity. And this is particularly an important subject now, because we live in very difficult and also very interesting times. And I know that these days, whenever I watch television or I go to the cinema, I know that it's almost never the case that the film ends on a positive note. I don't know about you, but I just don't remember when was the last time I saw something with a happy ending. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit naive, but now and again, we do want a happy ending. And now and again, we have got to establish our own foundation, as a kind of our own basis in the air on which an alternative can be created and constructed. I think the first important thing about the idea of renaissance and regeneration is that it's not a technical accomplishment. Regeneration and a renaissance actually means the recreation of an idea of human agency. Renaissance, a rebirth, does not happen to us. It's not something that magically arises out of a bottle. It is something that comes about through us believing that humanity can transform, alter, and be the subject of its destiny. I think to do that, we got to take into account 2 or 3 important lessons from the Renaissance and from our recent experience. I think the first thing that's really critically important is we got to recover historical memory. One of the things that has occurred in the last 20 or 30 years is that we think that what's going on now, the way we live our lives now, is the only way of living, and we forget that there were moments in the past when anything seemed possible, when people really felt that they had the capacity, the strength, and the power, through solidarity with other people, to change the way their lives were led. And you can see that there is an audience out there. Whenever you travel around Europe, the one good thing about the present moment, something that's very different to what existed in the past, is that when you go out at night on the streets, whether it's in Amsterdam or in London or in Paris, Rome, anywhere you go out, there are larger numbers of people out there at night. I think one of the most fascinating things about Europe is that the nighttime has become a new territory, a new landscape, where people are fairly desperately trying to meet each other, to experience human contact, to gain a sense of community. I think art and artists and performing artists have got to be there. In fact, what we call in sociology, it's a horrible term, the festivalization of urban life, is actually a really positive development. The very fact that you go to a place like Liverpool in England, you go to small towns all over Europe, and events have become almost the normal routine of the way that people experience their existence. So there are a lot of possibilities for experimenting, for risk-taking in relation to these important domains of human experience. And I think that is really something that we should be taking much more seriously as a way of reintroducing a new form of subjectivity.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.